Kathak dance means to tell a story. Katha, which means story. Kathak, which is a kathakar, which is someone who tells a story through the medium of dance. There's two segments to it. One is abhinay, which is expression, and one is pure dance. And of course, the combination of pure dance and abhinaya. It comes from North India. It's influenced by Islamic poetry as well as Hindu scriptures as well. It's one of the only art forms I know where these two ideologies come together. And it was performed in the temples originally. It went from the temples to the courts in front of all the kings, in front of all the shahs and the nawabs. And then from there now it's made a transition to the stage, to a contemporary stage. So it's again going through another evolution. There's a lot of mathematical footwork in there, there's a lot of spins in there, and it's a classical form, so there's a discipline within the body and the usage of space and the relationship of the center of the body to the rest of the body, and the relationship of the body to space is very important in Kathak. I think the performance that I'm doing right now, Murmur and Inked, is it's a combination of what I've trained in, which is Kathak and Bharatanatyam, which are the Indian forms, classical forms of dance. But then again, it also has to speak about today. It also has to be relevant to an audience which is geographically not bound by the Indian subcontinent. So they don't speak Hindi, Urdu or Marathi or whatever it may be. So what I try and do with the production is take the essence of what I've been trained in and to transcend it or to incorporate it into a language which becomes accessible to people. So you can call it contemporary or contemporized Kathak. And of course it moves sometimes quite far away from the medium of Kathak, and then often it comes back to the medium of Kathak and Bharatanatyam. So I suppose it becomes a mixture of whatever has affected me or I've been influenced by till this day. I use a lot of technology in the show, not to make it showy, but purely for the purpose of conveying the idea of dyslexia. Because it's something that exists within the mind, but affects the physical or the outlook of a person. And I wanted to really, we wanted to, with the collaborators, really delve into the world of imagination and perception. How do we bring people into the mind? How do we bring people into a perception? So we had to make something which became larger than life. So it wasn't just about the physicality, but the element of visual. Like when you look at something in dyslexia, how it changes, how it morphs. And this becomes possible with technology. And because we're in an age where technology really takes a first seat, I felt it was really important to be able to incorporate that into dance, but not to overpower it, but to enhance certain ideas. And that's why we use different types of technology from floor sensors to detect the footwork and foot beats, to a simple paper thrower which throws paper from the top into this vortex of fans to give the paper life. So using things in their simplest element, like giving paper movement, to complex technology which reads where I am and what sort of movement or the pressure of sound on the floor. Dyslexia becomes sometimes a tough subject for people to understand, because 1 in 3 people have dyslexia, they say, but the other 2 people don't. So the objective of the piece is to do with dyslexia, but then there's a sense of struggle and overcoming a struggle. It's called Murmur because when you have starlings which fly, the little birds, when they fly, they take flight and they make these huge formations which warp and change and, really completely baffle the mind. So in dyslexia, when you look at something, or at least when I looked at a board when I was a young student in school, the letters would swap and change. They would make logic in my mind, but they wouldn't make logic to other people when I wrote them down. So it was about this interpretation of how material changes And dyslexia always has a negative connotation attached to it. But for me, for me personally, it became a blessing, because you look at the world very differently, you interpret things very differently. And for me, it was just important to say there's nothing wrong with being different. And in fact, there's an advantage, because you create things which have a very different freshness to them. And that's what the piece is about. It's dance with a new freshness to it, with a new dynamic to it. For me, to tell a personal story is something that feels quite natural, because dance is an interpretation of life, of daily life. You know, it stops becoming an interpretation when you somehow detach yourself from it. And for me, it's very hard to detach myself from it. So the whole story was about the story of the missing A. You know, until the age of 21, I never knew that I had two A's in the beginning of my name. I always spelt my name A-K-A-S-H, but actually it's spelled A-A-K-A-S-H. But it took me 21 years to realize, to acknowledge this A. And this story really evolves around this idea of this A, and also being cylindered around this circle of fans as well, and being, you know, almost compact or enclosed by the circle of fans. So I think this story becomes personal, but because it's personal, it also becomes easier to illustrate to people who are sitting on the other side, because it comes from you, and you're telling something which has, you know, followed you through your whole life, and it's almost like you're looking back at some things in retrospect, and you're just conveying what has actually happened.